Everyone. I'm Peter Freer, founder of Play Attention. I hold a master's in education, and that's why I started Play Attention years ago. You're visiting the mindful partner, enhancing empathy and communication and understanding. So, we will be talking about mindfulness today and how important that is, especially in relationships. I think, just as I do in all of my webinars, I would appreciate it if you could be mindful during this webinar. And that means having few distractions around you. So if you're watching me on your computer, see if you can put down your cell phone. If you're watching me on your cell phone, make certain you're not checking your emails and all of that, just so that we can share information today and make this the most valuable webinar you've viewed all year long so far. There are some real gems in this webinar that will help you along this road, especially if you're having troubles with relationships. So these will be the topics we'll use that we'll discuss today. What is mindfulness? The benefits of mindfulness, time traveling. It's an interesting topic here, and how it's related to mindfulness. I'll leave you guessing as to what that is. ADHD and mindfulness, the connection, the benefits, mindfulness and communication skills, being calm and present tips and strategies, active listening to build trust, mindfulness, empathy, and compassion, and then next steps. So all of this is relative to mindfulness as a tool, and we'll discuss that more as we move forward. And we want to remember, though, mindfulness is not easy for everyone. It's not easy to understand and not easy to do. This is one of the key points we should make today, is that mindfulness is the practice of bringing your attention to the present moment. Now, if you are ADHD, that could be a problem just to start with, right? Because it involves having control over your attention and not having it scattered in many different directions at one time. Mindfulness means also having an attitude of openness, curiosity, and non-judgment. Equanimity is what that is, being equanimous. And that you don't have a continuing chatter going on inside one's head. And it's being fully aware. When you draw your attention to the present moment, you're fully aware of everything, your thoughts, emotions, even the physical sensations that you experience and in the surroundings. So in terms of athleticism, athletics in general, we call this being in the zone. And that's another way to think about mindfulness. There's nothing mystical or magical about it. It is actually a tool in a toolkit. And I'll go through that, and I'll use that analogy quite a bit today. Remember, this is a tool that you can use. And remember, in relationships, we have to use the right tools. And by right tools, I mean, if we're building a house, then typically having a spoon or a fork, they're not the tools I need for that job, right? If I'm cutting wood, I need a saw, right? If I'm hammering nails, I need a hammer. We need the right tools. And mindfulness is a tool that can help us with all of this. And the final statement here, that mindfulness allows us to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Now, if any of those issues affect you in your relationships, then you've come to the right place. Can I see a show of hands? Are you here because this is difficult for you? Mindfulness, being empathetic, being aware of the other person and having relationships. If that is the reason, give me a hands up so that we can see if this is what you need, this is what interests you, because that's what mindfulness is all about. And if you have tried mindfulness before and found it incredibly difficult to maintain because your mind just wanders and it starts chattering. And you find that very difficult as well. Can I get any hands on that? No, exactly. Okay, perfect. All right. So we know how odd a concept it can be, how difficult it is to manage, how difficult it is to understand. So I'm going to get into all of this in detail. When we are talking about the benefits to being mindful, remember we're talking about using it as a tool. It reduces our stress, it improves communication, and it allows us to approach other people with deeper empathy. Now, how this is done is what we'll discuss. How to do it, how to practice it, how to use specific strategies to use this in daily life are what's important, and that's what we'll do today. Time traveling. Time traveling is not mindfulness. All right. So when we understand these issues that I'm going to talk about right now, this will help you learn what mindfulness is by telling you what it is not. Time traveling, we do all the time, right? It is not mindfulness. It is totally unrelated. Well, it's the antithesis, is the best word. It's the antithesis, the exact opposite of mindfulness. And we do it. 1/3 of our lives is spent now, in the now, being present in the moment. Hopefully you have reduced or mitigated almost all of your distractions, right? Ceased all of your distractions so that you can be in the moment right now. That's a good strategy to use right now. But we spend 1/3 of our times in the now. It's really less than one third of our lives, but let's go into this in depth. I hope you like this Back to the Future kind of scope or meme that we're using right now. But 1/3 of our lives is spent in the past, right? And what does that mean? And I want you to not think of this as a scientist or a philosopher. Let's think about the way we live together and we'll share it as friends. 1/3 of our lives is spent in the past. Let's describe that. We spend 1/3 of our times living up here in memories. And those memories are comprised of videos and words and sensations that are stored there. And many times they're strong. The grief from a departed one, someone who's died, the regret that you did not do something many years ago, the resentment toward another person every time you think of them, the shame you feel when you think about something you should not have done. Now, they're not real, but we live in that world. 1/3 of our lives is spent time traveling to the past. Now, it's not has nothing to do with the moment now. It has everything to do with memory and those images that are stored there. If we are living in the past, we are not in the present and we are not mindful. Make sense? Trying to keep this as simple as possible. And it can be a little bit of fun when you start to talk about time travel, right? So if we live 1/3 of our lives in the past, well, what comes next? We live 1/3 of our lives in the future. We worry about those bills we have to pay. We worry what this person thinks about us. We worry, we think in the future um, about things that haven't happened that could be, the next asteroid to hit Earth kind of things. We think about these things that are, again, not real. They exist here in my mind, but they are images and thoughts and sensations that I draw back on in memory. And we're not living in the present moment. So this 1/3 that we spend in the future worrying about it, feeling hopeless and helpless because I can't do anything about the future. I have great fear because when people say, I have fear of the unknown. Well, you can't have fear of the unknown, right? Um, we have fear of what, if you don't know something, you can't be afraid of it. This is the funny thing about saying, I have a fear of the unknown. The idea is that if we have a fear of the unknown, we create that unknown in our minds, whatever it may be. But you can't fear the unknown because it's not present. It's not, there's nothing there. It's unknown. It's like asking me asking you for a telephone number and you don't know it. You can't be afraid of a telephone number you don't know, right? So it's future thinking, but it's not the now. And so since it's not the now, um, we are spending time in a place that does not help ourselves. It doesn't help us have a good relationship right now with those around us that we love or are close to or go to work with. So this is very, very important. We did have a couple of questions already about is this being recorded? This is being recorded and it will be made available to you by tomorrow, I think. So I originally said 1/3 of our lives is spent in the now, but it's really less than 1/3, right? Less than 1/3 of our lives is spent in the now, being mindful, being present, being engaged. Because, and I want a hand from you, if and be honest, how many people here are scrolling through emails? How many people here are maybe checking your TikTok or Facebook or something, right? How many people here are doing something else, paying attention to a television show that's on, reading something else? You're not in the present. You're not in the now. Is this making sense now? So even though your body is present and your mind is in somewhat listening a little bit, you have to occupy that space in your mind with entertainment, with things that you use to distract yourself. And that is not mindfulness, right? Remember, mindfulness is being engaged and being in the moment. And the question then comes to all of you here, but you're saying, so why is it important to do that? Why is it important for me to be in the moment and be engaged? And I'm going to go through this with you so it becomes really apparent. Because the whole purpose today is to show you, number one, that mindfulness is a great tool to improve your empathy, your engagement to other people, what they're trying to tell you, your ability to listen to them, to understand them, to walk in their shoes, to have compassion, which immensely strengthens your relationships. But if we're living in the past or we're living in the future, we're not engaged with the present. And when we are in the present, we live in a very distracted life now. You don't have to, but most of us do. And that's unfortunate because oftentimes our relationships suffer. And that's a natural outcome, isn't it? If you do love someone, then you make changes for them, which means you engage in the present. And I'll go into that in more detail. I can give you a personal experience on that coming up. So, what tool does mindfulness, what role does it play when I tell you, well, living in the past, not mindfulness, living in the future, not mindfulness, living in now and employing mindfulness, giving someone 100% of your attention and the chatter ceasing in the moment. That's one of the keys. When you are engaged and in the moment, the chatter stops. If you are thinking about something else while you're listening to me, then you are not engaged in the present moment. And I'll go into that in more detail. But mindfulness, when you apply it, stops us from time traveling. We're not in the past. We're not in the future. We are in the present and listening and totally engaged. Eckhart Tolle uh, stated this so simply: realize deeply, notice the word deeply, realize deeply that the present moment is all you have. The rest of the stuff does not exist in the past. It's just movies we keep playing in our heads, future and past. Make the now the primary focus of your life. Great advice. Great advice. Now, how do we do it? Tully didn't tell us how, but we'll go into some strategies and skills that you can do on your own to make this happen for you. Now, some of us here are here because this is brought to you by Play Attention, right? And I thought when I developed Play Attention to get people to be in the present moment, to get people to understand what attention really is and the benefits of quieting that mind, quieting that chatter were so important. I created this for ADHD folks. And we incorporate mindfulness programs in Play Attention as well. So you actually can practice using a neurofeedback loop to learn mindfulness when it's difficult for you. But when you have ADHD, it makes having good relationships that much more difficult. And most of you here who have ADHD, been diagnosed as ADHD, understand exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you here don't know what executive function is, so I'll go into that briefly. It's a certain set of skills that we have that we develop as we grow up. Now, for ADHD folks, people with TBI, ADHD, some forms of autism, have weaker executive function or skills, executive function skills that we list right here. We have them, they're either weak or non-existent. Brain development is different for an ADHD person. And these skills that we expect, because let's go back a step. When we're born, we're not born with executive function skills. This is a developmental portion of our lives for the brain, right? So when we don't have these skills, things go awry. Alyssa is pointing that out. She said, I've lost so many good relationships here. Um, and so many opportunities because of executive function problems, right? All at the same time. And this is what happens when we live in that world, an ADHD type of world. Sometimes our skills are not strong enough to help us have a healthy relationship. For example, emotion regulation. If I have poor emotion regulation, many times I get upset when a person just starts talking to me about something I feel is critical. I'm not listening. I just let my emotions run wild because the brain cannot govern them, those and regulate them. Right? That happens to many of us here. I'm certain. If I asked for people to put up a hand, would it? So a lot of people are responding to that. How about when I have inhibitory control? What if you're talking to me and I interrupt you and I keep interrupting you? And you think that you're getting your point across. If I keep interrupting, I'm getting my point across. The other person just is out of their mind and not able to feel, they don't feel that you're communicating at all. They know that you're not hearing them. Somebody asked, Toby said, when we watch a movie, where are we? And that's a good question. And I'll tell you, it depends. Toby, if you're totally engaged to the movie that's in front of you, you're in the present moment. Now, if you have a running conversation in your head about the movie, then you're not in the present moment. That's the key. The key is I watch with intensity. I pay so much attention. And a good movie maker can actually make you be in that moment. I work also I use the technology I built for Play Attention in a a vertical called neurocinematics, which means we watch people, we watch their brains while they're engaging in a movie. And this is super important because the question actually is quite broad. And so we watch everyone's attention in the movie. We're looking at these ongoing graphs of attention. When the movie maker is really good, you'll see everyone in the audience, right? We have many sensors out in the audience that are watching people's brains in real time, just like the play attention armband. And when the movie maker is really good, you'll see them all sync. Their brains actually synchronize. This is called brain synchronization. So it is not only a theory, right? It's not something that's just intangible. We can actually see people become mindful together and synchronize their brain patterns. This is not uncommon. Even people who play video games, will their brains will sync, even if they're not in the same room. But if they're so intent and in the moment with these games, they too can sync. So that is a part of being mindful. But again, that implies that we're not listening to chatter. We're not judging. We're just in the moment, giving our utmost of attention. And of course, that is all related to having good executive function as well. I hope this is becoming clearer as we move along. Sometimes with ADHD, we have something called RSD, rejection sensitivity or sensitive dysphoria. And that is a problem. There isn't a lot of research on it, and there's not even a clinical diagnosis. But some of you may experience this, that you have an intense emotional reaction to someone even thinking about that you assume are rejecting you. You shut down. You won't listen. You turn away. You can't take it. It upsets you. It makes you cry. It's intensely objectionable to you. And that's called rejection sensitivity. If we are experiencing that, it's because we have emotional regulation problems in executive function. Right? So the way that an ADHD person's brain is wired is different. And we often, if we have ADHD, then we experience this quite a bit. And then it kind of spirals out of control when we don't have good emotion regulation, especially for rejection. Because then I start thinking, I'm not going to talk to him. I love this fellow, but I'm not going to talk to him because this is what she's thinking. I'm not going to talk to him because he's just going to reject me. And so you start creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? She knows she loves him, but if he says anything even slightly off, that she feels is rejecting her, it sends her into a tizzy. Can't take it. It's way too much for her to bear. And then she starts to create that in her mind. Here's that time traveling. She creates that in her mind. He's done this in the past. And that hurt, not having it again. So she's now projecting it to the future. So she's time traveling to the future, not in the now. And so she creates this self-fulfilling prophecy where she's just not going to have any relationship because she could be rejected. Does anyone here identify with that at all? Yeah, there are a few of us. Yeah. It's amazing how the brain operates. When you start to understand this and you can see it as a fact, it's incredibly important, right? If you see it as a fact, what happens? Well, then you can make change. But the most important part is first seeing this as a fact. That's why we're doing this webinar today. And I hope you understand how different this webinar is from a regular webinar. We're actually teaching today, right? We're not just showing you information, it's teaching, because the more we know about ourselves, the more change we can make. And that's the purpose of the webinar, to teach us about the way that our brain is working. And if we understand the way our brain is working, then we have the power to change it. We have the tools to change it. Play attention was one of those that I made years ago, and it's still, the number one tool globally for neurocognitive change. Mindfulness is a tool that we use to change this. That's why we're doing the webinar on mindfulness. Is this starting to make sense now? I hope it is. I hope you are following. If not, you can always say I'm lost, or that doesn't make sense. I'm happy to explain. When you have ADHD or autism, your nervous system may overreact to things in the outside world. It may not be just rejection, it just may be hypersensitivity, which is, again, emotion regulation. But rejection may cause the emotion reaction that's more extreme than usual. You can see it can be very painful, and it causes us not to be mindful. So again, here I go again. Mindfulness is a practical tool to improve executive function. We're going to talk about how we use that upcoming. It can also reduce your stress, because now when I'm in the middle of a conversation and I'm listening, I'm not internalizing things, feeling like I'm getting rejected, feeling like I'm getting misunderstood or criticized. So my stress is reduced because I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm not. Mindfulness means that you are not judgmental. You just let it. You're watching it as you are watching something that's so interesting. You're watching the sun, a sunset. You're watching a movie that you love. It improves communication if we are mindful, and I'm going to go into this in great detail. It allows us to approach others with empathy, to feel what they're feeling. All right. We'll go into this in greater detail now so that we can start picking up on this. The first area that we want to talk about is mindfulness and communication skills, because this is the core of building relationships, is our ability to communicate well and communicate so that we are listening and making certain the challenges that normally face us, we diminish. We'll use mindfulness as the tool to do that. We want to make certain that we understand that not listening to our partner is because we're distracted. That's not mindfulness, right? Distracted does not enter when we are mindful. Or our partner's not listening to us, they're distracted. They're not being mindful. So the art to listening and being able to communicate is something that we have to study. I mean, anyone here, has anyone ever studied this? What it takes to do this? Because who does that? Who teaches you that? We don't learn it at school, really. Maybe we took a communications course at university or something, but we still don't learn how the brain functions. And if we know how the brain functions, then all of this becomes simpler. And it keeps us from reacting emotionally. Now, remember, here's the spiral we get into. If we have this constant chatter in our mind when someone is talking with us, then we're automatically starting to get triggered. Oh, he's telling me in my mind, I'm hearing this while I'm talking to a friend or my wife. Oh, he or she, my wife is saying she is just, oh, she's really digging into me right now. And this is what she's telling me. And this, I just totally, so I'm not really listening to her. I'm triggered. That is not mindfulness. Notice there's a big X here. That's not mindfulness. Now, that triggered leads to my reaction. So now inside, I am starting to boil, right? So there's my reaction. I'm going to let it loose. Then I start yelling. And so she's totally looking at me like, what is going on here? Why is this happening? So this is this total spiral, right? This is the chain that keeps happening over and over and over again. And if we continue it, we note that our relationships are going to decline. And you may have noted that, and that's why you are here. So you can continue this by not being mindful, or you can learn mindfulness and learn to diminish this and have good relationships. So has this ever happened to you? You're talking with your other half, right? And you come and go, what just happened here? Holy cow, this is not, they didn't hear a word I said. And then you get that misunderstanding. This is just a picture over the previous slide. And there you have all this miscommunication now, and you feel disconnected from the other person. They don't get it at all. I don't want to even, I'm not sitting here any longer. And then you depart mad. Now, how does that? I'll use a Dr. Phil meme. How's that working for you? Right? It doesn't. Now, here's the mindfulness tool that we can use. Right? Mindfulness is a reset button for your relationship. That's why it's such a practical tool. So, upcoming now, we're going to start talking about how we actually use this. And this I put in here because it is a gem. Listen to this very carefully. This is Lao Tzu. 1,000 years ago, Lao Tzu said, the usefulness of the teacup is in its emptiness. And you have to ponder that deeply. What is he getting to? Well, there's a great story about this, and it comes from having conversations and communicating. So there is an old martial arts master who is famed throughout Southeast Asia, and a student that has heard of him, and he studied for many years. The student is also a very skilled martial artist, goes to see the old martial arts master, and they sit down for tea together. And the master said, "Well, uh, what I do is this." And the student goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I know that. I know that. We do that. I've done that for many years." And he said, "Well, we do this." And the student goes, "Oh, yeah, I know all of this already. I mean, I know this." And while the master starts to spell out more of how to improve your technique, internally the students go, "Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, well, I would disagree with that." And so the master senses this and he looks at the student. He says, "Let's have our tea." So the student has his cup on the table, and the master starts pouring tea into the cup. And as it's flowing, it's getting near the surface, the student's watching it, and the master just keeps pouring and looking at the student. And the teacup starts to overflow, and the tea's going across the table. The student jumps up away from the table to not get it on his lovely garment. And he looks at the old man. He goes, my cup is overflowing. I, why are you doing this?" And the old man looks at him and he says, "In order for you to taste my tea, your cup has to be empty." There's great wisdom in that. This is a gem of a piece of wisdom, especially if you're attempting to have a good relationship, if you're interested in having a good relationship. So when I sit, and I learned this the hard way myself, by the way, and I'll give you a good example of mine. When I was building these programs and so deeply into building play attention, so deeply into building neurotechnology, filing patents, being crazy, crazy busy, working, I don't know, 3 or 4 jobs, 6 days a week, just to put this all together. My wife was all part of this adventure, and it got to the point where she would come in and say something while I'm typing away at the computer. And then she would walk away, and then I'd stop and go, was my wife was she just in here? No. Well, did she say something? So she let that go for about a year and a half. And then she came to me and she said, "If you're not present when I'm talking to you, then we're done." And so if I found that, that hits you right in the face. Yeah, there's no dodging it. You get this is a fact. I have to confront it. I have to address it. I have to be mindful to it. So now when my wife starts talking to me at any point, and the TV's on, I turn the TV volume off or turn the TV off altogether. If I'm at my computer, I will stop and then I turn and face her, eye to eye contact, listening to her. And it was an amazing thing when I realized how much she had to offer me along this journey. But not being mindful prevented me from realizing who she was. Are you with me? Do you follow? Because it's super, super important, right? Another thing that I found out is she said you need to take breaks so that you get out of this environment and you can let your mind relax. So we began taking walks together. And I remember it was a very short time after I began to understand what it was that I needed to do. If I realized, and this is what Tali in that previous slide was talking about, when you realize deeply that the only time you have, the only real time is now, then when you realize that and you realize, well, if love and having a relationship is so important that I have to be in the now with that person. Otherwise, you're not showing love, you're not experiencing love. You're off in the land of the future or you're stuck in the past. So this became really evident because we went on a walk together. My wife and I went on a walk together. And we were walking, and I said, "Oh, can you hear that? I hear it." And it was the first time in years that I actually heard birds. I actually heard nature again. And it was a wake up call, second wake up call. If I'm not doing that, I am wasting life. I am not in a healthy relationship. How many people here are following this now? Raise your hand if you understand what I'm getting at, because this is super, super important. Excellent. Thank you. I mean, I cannot begin to tell you how super important you have to understand how the brain functions, how we live life right now, and how distracted we are. Once you understand that, you can make change, right? And when you get hit, as I did, square on, then you make the change. If you love someone, you are driven to do that, you know. So the mindfulness tool, there's that practical tool that bridges those gaps that arise in everyday action. So now we have Fred and Wilma from two slides before where they're arguing, and he's using mindfulness techniques to hear her, and it makes the relationship solid, right? That's what we were getting at today. All right. So I want everyone here to take a personal journey right now. We're going to journey into the past. This is not mindfulness. This is journeying to the past where we have a memory. Think about the last time you were in a conversation and one that you really needed to pay attention to, but your mind was somewhere else. Hopefully that's not right now because I need your attention so that you learn this. But think of the time that you were in that conversation. Think of who it was with, but your mind was somewhere else. All right. You were just replay it in your mind, past argument. All right. And when you are doing that, can you see how hard it was to connect? Can you follow that memory just a little bit further and you see what the cause, what it caused later? Can you start to actually see that? Again, that's super important. Now we'll come out of the past into the present. We're going to stay calm and present. How do we do that? These are techniques that will help you, and I started with them today when we started talking. This number one, especially in modern times, is so important, right? 4 quick steps to starting mindfulness. Remove any devices. Like I said, turn off the TV, at least turn off the sound. Turn off the TV altogether if it's a super important conversation. Look at the other person. Engage. Look. Then listen to your breathing. Deep breath. I'm bringing my attention into play. Maintaining eye contact. Notice how your body feels from your feet on the floor to your hands in your lap or on the table, and you'll feel grounded. You're moving from the past or the future back into the present moment. Avoiding reactive behaviors right now is a really good technique. You want to stop the chatter going on in your head and just focus on your breathing. Because if the chatter is gone, you're really engaged, then you won't have reactive behaviors because there's nothing to react to. You're simply listening. You're not having that conversation like the old martial arts master who was trying to explain to the younger student, and the student just kept on having that inner chat. Can't learn anything when you do that. You have to empty your teacup. These 4 techniques can help start you on your path. And if you have ADHD, how important is that? Now, it's particularly difficult to be mindful when we do have ADHD because attention is a factor to us. We have plenty of attention. It's just diffused. I have 4 channels, 5 channels playing in my mind all the time. And we know that that noise, when we're trying to engage, trying to fully listen, and I'm trying to fully listen to my significant other, right? I'm trying to do that, but I have 4 channels playing at the same time. So how does that work for you? Most likely, one of the most difficult aspects of ADHD is having a good relationship. It's because mindfulness is so difficult. But mindfulness is a tool. And when it is a tool, you can craft that tool. You can hone that skill. We'll show you how to do it. We've already given you a few tips and strategies, but there are more to come as we move this forward. These strategies basically not only strengthen mindfulness, when you start to strengthen mindfulness, it strengthens your executive function overall because you're regulating, emotionally regulating. You're controlling your impulsivity. You're self-monitoring. The fact that you can listen to your breathing, self-monitoring. I can feel my sensations, self-monitoring. These are all just in reinforcing the skills you need to have better executive function. Now, let's talk about active listening. All right. Active listening means we don't have this dialogue beating the other person down in my head at the time I'm listening to them. If anything enters, it's like a bolt of lightning and it just comes and goes. All right. It may be something they said that you have a question about, and that question will pop just like a lightning bolt, and then you let it go. So when they finish, you go, "You said this. Could you be more clear? Could you tell me more about that?" Because you're learning. This is the opportunity for the brain to learn. All right. So that's part of active listening. As I just said, if you are having this internal exchange, debating, talking, somewhere else, drifting off to the future, drifting off to the past, that is not active listening. That is not mindfulness. That creates this environment, right? For the person on the other side. If you are not engaged in active listening, here's what the other person feels: unheard, worse, misunderstood totally. And that is sometimes when you're trying to have a conversation, but you're not in the present moment. The other person just goes, "You're not hearing a word I say. It's impossible to talk to you. I can't stand this. I've got to go." How many people, be honest, no one else will see it. How many people here have experienced this? Yes. That's why we're here. All right. So when you feel that this is, you know, physically, they leave the room. They can't take it. There's distancing, but it's not only the physical distancing that's happening, it's the distancing from us in the relationship that's, you know, happens at work or at home with friends. But when you actively engage, I employ mindfulness. I'm actively listening. I'm not debating. There's no judgment going on. That is active listening. That's mindfulness. And it then creates connection. And if you have connection, then you are on the foundation to building trust from the other person. Oh, he did get it. He listened. Then trust builds. You develop that. This is a very simple slide, but we need to listen to it. And again, together. It goes, active engagement, active listening. I like even active engagement because it's not only listening, I'm watching them. I'm watching their entire being in front of me. Now, you go, well, what's the big deal with that? Watching their entire being. Well, that sounds like a lot of nonsense. It's not. Active listening, active engagement is a tool that actually the brain uses. So many studies have been done. We have in our brains, we have these things called mirror neurons. They tend to help us learn by watching. When I am so thoroughly engaged in watching someone, and it's just very simple. I am a martial arts instructor myself. I have an eighth degree black belt. I've done everything, UFC, cage, all kinds of crazy martial arts things. And I've done it for over 50 years. When fully engaging when we're doing this is going beyond just listening. It's actively watching. And when I'm teaching this, usually I will model the technique for the person. Here's a spinning back kick. Here's how it's done. And I break it down and I show them over and over again. Because the brain is equipped with mirror neurons. So in their mind, they start to watch me do it, and their brain is mirroring us. Their neurons are firing just as if they were doing it. You see the relationship here? So experiments have been done with people learning. Do people learn better from a computer program, or do they learn better by watching another human being? Typically, they learn better by watching another human being. They used, one of the studies they used, is anyone here old enough to remember the dance? There was a dance game out where the things would light up on the floor, tiles would line up, and you were dancing to that with, on the screen, and you would do these steps. Yeah, a lot of us remember that. Dance craze. I can't remember what the thing actually was named. And they did a study. If they did just the movements on the floor on one screen, did the brain light up? And as compared to the movements on the floor with the person on the screen emulating the dance steps, right? Going through the dance steps. And they found out that those people who saw the human and watched those learned faster and better than the people who only watched the computer screen and the simple lights showing where the feet were supposed to go. So the brain is entirely equipped for this. And you're sitting there now going, well, Peter, what's the point? Let's go ahead and talk about me watching you, mirroring you as you're talking. When you're talking with someone, many times a person will mirror you. I oftentimes, to see if someone's listening in a conversation, I'll do this. And if I see their hand at some point shortly thereafter go up to their face, I know they're in tune with me. Their brain is asking for it. Their brain is learning from it. But if internally I have all this chatter going on, it is not happening. They're not learning, they're not listening. So this is called mirroring, and the brain is equipped for it. It's evolved to have these special circuits for it. So when you're watching someone actively engaging, actively listening, your brains are starting to sync. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? So I want to be able, when I'm engaged like that, I listen without interruption. All right. This is mindful listening, active engagement, active listening. I listen without interruption. That creates the space for the other person to express themselves without feeling that you're being judgmental. Mirror what you hear. There's that mirror concept again. Even in my brain where it's mirrored, I can actually verbally mirror it. I thought I heard you say, once they're done, I thought I heard you say you were frustrated because, is that correct? And then you get quiet and you listen. And there you're actively engaged again. You mirror so that you are on the same page. You have a reality check coming in from the mirror. Did I hear you say? That's part of the mirroring. And then, of course, there's the other mirroring where I'm watching their whole body. Then you validate their emotions, right? You, even if you don't agree, you say, if you do understand their emotions, you can say, I understand why that would be upsetting. I understand why you feel like that. Now, you don't have to agree. You don't have to even use the word agree. I can understand why you would feel like that. And I'm sorry that you feel like that. That kind of thing. That all comes from active listening. So we're building trust between each other because for the first time in our relationship, all of a sudden we are starting to understand each other by being actively engaged, mindfully engaged. Get deeper connections. You are reducing the misunderstandings that we talked about initially. And the other person finally feels valued. I think that was one of the things that affected my wife when I actually got hit in the face with it. That this is this is not being loving, right? This is being more self-centered, living in the past or living in the future. I then realized what a value she was to me as well. How important this person is, because that's all we have is now. And this is all we're all capable of this by just being in the moment, being mindful. Now, if you are a parent, remember this is all learned. Start parenting with it. If you're a professional, or if you're collaborating, or anyone navigating, ADHD challenges, this is a great start. Active listening, something you can practice together. You just have the opportunity in your hands, and you actually have to take hold of it and build stronger relationships with it as a tool. Is everybody kind of clear on where we're going with that? Now, this is empathy and compassion here that we talked about earlier. How do I get myself to understand what this person is feeling? Well, the active engagement with them, that's the first step. I'm watching them. I'm letting my mirror neurons take in everything so that my brain starts to change. This is a curious part. Have you ever noticed how much your conversations feel, how much better they feel when the other person really understands where you're coming from? They get you. And oftentimes, the first thing your brain will do once they say something, you go, oh, you get me. You understand me. Maybe you're feeling that right now. Maybe some of you are going, holy cow, he knows exactly how I feel. Anybody here get that? You get that now? Do you feel that now? Do you feel, all right, holy cow, this makes sense. I got it. Or he, freer here on this side. Oh, he gets this. He understands this. That is the power of empathy. I feel it. It strengthens our bond. It strengthens the bonds of your relationship, and it gets you connected on a much deeper level. It allows us to see, it's that old saying, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, right? This active engagement, active listening, active engagement with the other person actually helps us see what they're seeing, feel what they're feeling, and understanding and strengthening. Because if we don't, we have no real relationship. It's it's a way to develop a meaningful relationship. And I know most of us here desperately want that. We're not islands, although we technology has kind of forced us to be, feel like we have friends when we're only online and we don't have much touch, much relationship with anybody. We are isolated more now than ever before. Depression is higher than it has ever been in human history. Loneliness is higher than it ever has been in human history. And now I hope that makes sense because as you have now seen through this entire webinar, we live our lives either in the past or in the future, not mindful, not in the present moment. And when we are in the present moment, we're distracted, we're entertained, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're not in the present, we're not listening to each other. And you know how that's affected your relationship. And that's why, most likely, you are here. All right. So the good thing about it is it can be fostered, right? It's not something necessarily you're born with. The brain is somewhat pre-wired for it, but you develop that as you move on. As a parent, teach this to your children. If you're a professional, teach it to your client. 1, 2, 3. Practice perspective taking. Ask yourself, when you're watching, someone on TV whose house just burned down, like in Los Angeles, what might this person be feeling right now or experiencing right now? Imagine that, right? You can have a in the moment feeling with that if you're being mindful. Responding with kindness. Number 2, just a small gesture, anytime that you can give it, like a kind word or supportive action, can change someone's whole day and sometimes their whole life. Acknowledge shared humanity. Remind yourself that we all face the same challenges and emotions, even if they're not always visible. All of us, this is typically being human. We all have great grief, great sorrow. We experience joy. We worry. So human consciousness is shared. Now, what we do with it right now is of vital importance. And that's why we're talking about being in the moment, actively engaged. So what did we learn? What are your takeaways? What is mindfulness? It's easy to come to mindfulness by knowing what it is not. In other words, we're looking at it through negation. It is not being in the past. It is not being in the future. It is not ignoring someone or becoming distracted when they're trying to have a relationship with us. It is being actively engaged in the present moment. It is not allowing the chatter has no room to take over because I am devoting all of my attention to you. Not once during this webinar has my mind had chatter going through it. I'm only engaged with you listening. That's it. That's why I have no script. I have some cues on the screen that to talk to you about, but all of this just flows because I'm in the moment. Mindfulness benefits. Well, we said it reduces stress. It builds stronger relationships. It helps me understand. It helps me be empathetic. It helps me and both of us become compassionate. That's mindfulness. Time traveling, not mindfulness. Time traveling to the past or the future, 1/3 of our lives. And it all exists where? It exists up here. Tapes that I play, audio files I play, feelings that I once had. They exist only here. They're not in front of me where the most important part of my life is. ADHD and mindfulness, it's a challenge, right? Because mindfulness means putting your attention into the current moment. And so it is a skill you can develop. We have it in play attention. I'll talk about that in just a minute so that you can learn it, the foundations to it, learn how to apply it. Mindfulness and communication skills. Mindfulness and being able to communicate means being actively engaged, right? To be, and we'll add that one, be calm and in the present below it. And when I do this, I'm giving you my utmost inattention. My mind just gets quiet. There is no judging. There's no talk. It's just active engagement. This builds our relationship. This builds trust. This builds compassion between us and understanding. And that is all due to mindfulness. So what next steps can we do? Well, remember here, you can practice all of those tips and strategies. And as I said earlier, this is recorded, so you'll have them to look at again. Play Attention actually has games in it that allow you to be mindful and learn mindfulness. You can absolutely learn to do it so that you're not getting triggered. You're not overly emotional. You're just in the moment building a relationship. Play Attention has all of that in it. You'll be surprised at some of those mindfulness games. They are absolutely wonderful. And if you want to learn about them, schedule a consultation. It's free. Just if you type in consultation right now, someone will contact you with about setting one up. You can take the ADHD test at playattention.com to find out where you are and whether Play Attention would be right for you. Check out the new mindfulness apps. All right. So if you want to view those, just you can, if you're already a Play Attention user, you can call your coach to see them. If you're not, do the consultation and they'll show you some of those games. And we have a 15-day mindfulness challenge coming up. I really appreciate all of you for attending and being in the moment with me for a little while and learning what it is to take this on. So it's been very wonderful, and I appreciate it. Everyone take care, and if there's anything else we can do, let us know.